Hey everybody, it's Robbie. We just got the final patch notes for Season 8 starting next week. We have the full class balance changes. We have buffs coming to the bosses, and they buff the loot and reduce the amount of materials required. And we got a ton of changes to the new season event that is going to make it a lot more juicy to run those new zones. So the full patch notes going to be linked below. There are a ton of buffs and a ton of nerfs for the classes itself. But we're going to start with some general stuff. So the boss ladder, as many of you know, gets completely changed. And what they did from the PTR to the live game is they added more boss loot. That means, especially on Belial, they made him harder, like much harder to kill. But they also doubled the amount of ancestral loot that you get from him. They also reduced the amount of keys that you need from Belial from 2 to just 1. So you just need like 1 material, the way I understood it, for those liar bosses to summon them. And that's obviously going to make it a lot easier to get into this boss loop and basically keep chaining the bosses. Also, the annoying timer that was at the chest that we complained about a lot, there was a 30 seconds timer between the boss openings. That has also been removed. So as soon as you open the chest, you can re-summon the boss again. That's a massive W. We'll be looking here at the patch notes. And we will see here also the experience reward reduction. So on the PTR, they reduce the amount of experience that the player gets by quite a lot. This has been reverted. So the leveling experience is not going to feel much slower than before. The item changes, like a bit less legendaries and stuff, that's still in. But the experience reward reduction has been much lessened to create a smaller difference between this new season and the current season. They also tremendously buffed this new zone here. So, you know, on the PTR, it felt kind of unrewarding to do the new Helltide zone event here, the Apparition Incursions. They also buffed that quite a lot. Now, there's a new boss here, basically, this guy here, this beast. They also added a bounty to this, so not all the time, but every now and then, there's going to be bounties in this like world zone, basically, that you can fight together with your friend. It's an open world event. There's also Belial that can spawn here, and you can beat him, basically. They also increased the amount of spectral ashes that drop. You can see the spectral ash here in the video. This is what you need to update your boss powers. They also significantly increased the loot, ashes that you get from the boss, as well as decrease the amount of ashes that you need to upgrade your powers to a higher level. That basically means for the magic powers and the rare powers, it's going to be very comfortable to level them up. It's going to be much faster. They also did a really cool change here. This is like general changes, then we'll talk about the class balance. They adjusted the odds at which you can upgrade your paragon glyphs when your pit tier is lower than your glyph level. So many people had concern that they will not be able to get their glyphs to 100 because at some point you can't level them anymore. And now they gave you still a chance. Let's say you do a pit 70, you still have a chance to upgrade your glyph to 100. It might just be like a 5% chance. We don't know exactly the chance, but you're basically going to be able to still leveling the glyph to 100, even on a bit of a weaker build where you can't clear pit 100 because it has gotten harder. However, they reverted some of the harsh scaling, both for Torment and also for the pits. So the pit is not going to be as easy on the live server, but it's not going to be as hard as on the PTR. And I did some rough calculation here. I mean, obviously, this is just what they like roughly said, that the Torment 4 is 6 tier difference than the last Torment. So this was the PTR value. So on the PTR, Torment 4 was about 6.5 times harder. And now with this new scaling, that's what they said, it's going to be around 6 tiers in difficulty of the pit. And that means it's going to be about 2.5 times harder rather than 6 times harder. So it's maybe going to be like double difficulty than on the live server. And that's not really all too crazy, I think. It's going to be like very achievable because they do have some stuff of the season journey locked behind Torment 4. I think it's going to be more than 10% of the player base that can now reach the Torment difficulties here and beat Torment 4 and also finish the season journey. I think this is going to be like a lot easier, basically 3 times easier almost, because instead of 6.5 times, it's only like 2.5 times the HP. And this also will apply to the pit scaling. We don't know exactly by how much, but I also think the pit scaling is at least halved. Like it's not going to be as crazy hard to do pit 100 as it used to be. Pretty cool stuff, basically. Then they talked a bit about those boss powers. Obviously, they have put a lot of nerfs into the boss powers. However, I think overall that's pretty decent. It looks like they even reworked some of the buff that they did to the Ashava boss power. Like we don't really have full confirmation on this one. But the Ashava boss power looked very overtuned here with the 1200%. And it looks like they didn't even mention any change here. So right now the assumption is that this is old news and the Ashava boss power is not buffed because it was clearly a bit out of line. However, I might make an update once we know more about that. One more thing about the boss powers, guys. On the PTR, they scaled all the way to Paragon 300. They have reduced that scaling and also kept that scaling at Paragon 200. So after Paragon 200, you are not increasing your damage of your boss powers any longer. Plus the scaling is changed. So that puts even more of a nerf to the boss powers, and that shifts even more power from the boss powers back to your character. I don't really like the caps, capped at Paragon 200. I don't think that's too great, but in general, having the character deal the main damage rather than the boss power is a great change. And then next thing here, we have a Barbarian and in general class balance changes. We are just starting with the Barbarian. So they set some philosophy approaches here. So Barbarian, 3 points. They buffed Whirlwind. They nerfed Earthquakes even further. And it looks like they kind of nerfed and buffed Mighty Throw. So probably Mighty Throw is going to stay somewhat the same. I'm probably going to make a dedicated video about Barbarian, and obviously we're going to have a tier list and everything coming up here this weekend. But right now, it actually looks there is a small chance for Whirlwind to be at least a decent build because they buffed it again. They already buffed it on the PTR. Now they buffed it again from 32 to 52, which is a 60% multiplicative buff. And they also buffed the bleed rune here. Now we don't really have the craziest bleed multipliers, but they did buff it from 40 here to 120% weapon damage. And it depends really on how this is applied. If this is on each Whirlwind tick, which is about 3 times a second, it could actually be pretty good. But this remains to be seen how exactly the mechanic works. If it applies on every tick, it's really good. If it doesn't apply on every tick, it's meh. We'll see. They buffed double swing again. They buffed basically all the core skills here, about 10%. They also added a buff here to the twin strikes, which used to have chance for double swing, double damage, chance to cast double swing, and now it's chance to deal double damage. So double swing is actually looking pretty good as well. And they significantly nerfed Earthquake. So they did cap the executioner aspect. And I roughly calculated it here. I'm just going to breeze through it for a second. So it looks like that thing, so this was my old one, 800% on the executioner here. That's like the main stat scaling. And that is reduced to just 200% in the patch notes. So we're going down to like 32 times damage nerf. So yeah, it's going to be significantly weaker here. Like you're going to lose damage divided by 30. So yeah, the Earthquake times are over because they also did nerf the tech rune from 1,400 down to 700. On the PTI, it still was 1,000. So it's not really that great. And then for Mighty Throw, there's like a bug fix. So they reduced the damage from 200 to 50, but they also fixed a bug where sometimes this one was not multiplicative, but additive. So overall, the damage seems to be somewhat unchanged. That makes Mighty Throw potentially actually one of the best builds overall. And they talked about like all the classes for sure. So on the Druid here, they are slightly buffing the Earth and Might again. They are getting some resource buffs, and the multiple key passives also get a small buff. I'm not quite sure if this is going to be enough. Druid was not really that great on the PTR, so we'll see about that. The Necromancer here, and this was the most surprising. So the Necromancer, you know how the Blood Wave build was insanely strong on the live game, and it still was insanely strong on the PTR, and they decided to buff it again. In fact, the Bloodwave Necro was by far the highest clear in my tier list draft already, because the Bloodwave Necro did 105 with no boss powers. Still hitting for billions here, like 500 billion damage per tick. And this one got buffed from 450 there, like even like 2 trillion per tick. And this one got buffed from 450 to 500% again. So this is looking to be, again, by far the strongest builds. We predicted it right last time, and I think there's nothing even close to the Bloodwave Necro. Let me know in the comments, and we will also obviously check everything out the next days if there's anything even close to Bloodwave. But I still think Bloodwave is going to be the strongest build of last season, and it's also going to be actually by far the strongest build this season. I hope I'm wrong, but right now I don't see anything that's even close to the Necromancer. So Bloodwave is eating good. And then don't forget, all the pet builds are also getting some tremendous buffs thanks to the Beast Fall. Beastmaster's training here. This one basically buffs all your pets at the highest level. It buffs them by a factor of 157%. And this one has not been nerfed. So all the pet builds, all the minion builds, also Lightning Spear on the Sork later, tremendously benefits from that. They also buffed the Bloodlands. I think they doubled the Bloodlands casts. Yeah, you see here, they doubled the Bloodlands damage against a single target. So Bloodlands is getting a buff, and it's getting another double damage against the single targets. So Necro is eating very good. They also buffed the new unique here quite a bit. So this one used to be 10%. Now it's 25, but only works for me after that. Overall, that's still a massive buff. So Minion Necro, pretty good. Bloodlands Necro, pretty good. Bloodwave Necro, best build in the game still. That's what I think. We will make the tier list on Saturday, on Sunday, on this weekend at least, and we'll see. But I don't see anything that's even close to clearing like 105 or 110 on the PTR without boss powers. Like this clear here was completely without boss powers, and that's an insane build. And yeah, I don't really understand why this got buffed again, but here we are. So Necromancer is going to eat very good. On Rogue, there's been some nerfs to the Death Trap. This one was overperforming. I think they nerfed it like by 50% or something. And then some smaller buffs here and there that's going to help the class out, I think. But I don't really have so much to say about the Rogue. You can read the patch notes for yourself. On Sorcerer, this actually going to be looking somewhat decent. They did a lot of buffs to the ice shards. They completely reworked one of the passives, and I really like this change. If you read this passive here, this is the key passive, and this will work for every Frost build. Basically, 30% reduced mana. You get 1.6 multiplier and another 1.25 against vulnerable targets. So double damage for Frost spells. And this one can be combined with the new Hail of Winterglass, which now gets cooldown reduction. And they also changed the, what was it? Frozen Memories. Actually, let's look in the patch notes here. The Frozen Memory aspect also got changed to be a 75% multiplicative damage buff and another additive 30% resource reduction. And this can be put on a two-hander for 2.5x%. It's like really strong aspect. And combined with this Avalanche and some other changes to the ice shards, there might be a decent chance for this to be an actually legit build. And then obviously, you still have the Lightning Spear Sorcerer that's also benefiting from the 2.5x boss power for all the pets and the summons. And I think that's going to be incredible strong as well. Last but not least, we have the Spiritborn. They did fix unyielding hits. This is like the aspect that gives you all the extra weapon damage. They fixed that to finally work with all the multipliers. They buffed basic builds, and they did fix a lot of buffs on the Sunbird Gorgeous and Rushing Claw. This is going to be like this Firestorm build. You may have seen this before. It actually looks pretty solid. They kept buffing this. This one is a higher multiplier. The feathers are also Jaguar now. And this is basically the playstyle. And this was somewhat decent already for Torment 4. And yeah, it just got stronger. Now we'll see exactly how strong in the tier list that we're going to make soon. But yeah, there's obviously a ton more changes. I'm going to link the patch notes below. It looks pretty cool. There's a ton of exciting stuff, especially them like, nerfing the pit a bit again, and also making more builds viable, as well as buffing the XP, removing the timer on the bosses, buffing the loot, juicing the season mechanics. A lot of positive things. We will see exactly how the Whirlwind Barb is going to land and stuff. I'm just a bit surprised to see the Bloodwave Necro like reign supreme again. However, they already did say if some builds are overperforming, they are looking at them very early, and they're gonna have a policy of nerfing earlier this time. Like, they are talking the first week, if some build is clearly overperforming or bugged, they're gonna act on this. And I think that's gonna be really nice to see, you know, some of the outliers. Like, I mean, I'm calling it Bloodwave Necro is a big outlier to me, but we'll see how that's gonna go. There's a good chance, if it's really that strong, like the way I'm thinking, that it's gonna get tuned down. Hope you enjoyed, guys. Season starts on Tuesday, and I'm gonna have a tier list and build guides. In fact, I already made a ton of build guides here for Season 8. Gonna put the link below. The boss power is updated. I'm gonna like slowly update these over the days. And then obviously we also gonna have a tier list because this draft got a bit overthrown. And then we'll talk about the strongest builds for each of the classes. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you soon. GG. If you liked this video, make sure to subscribe, leave a like or a comment. I'm also live on Twitch almost every day, so come and say hi.